There was always something inexplicably pleasing about the sound of an answering machine. You know, the beep that would cut through any conversation to let you know you had mail? It was like Christmas every time. A surprise waiting for you whenever you got home. These days, answering machines are a thing of the past, but every now and again, you still stumble across one at a garage sale or an antique store. And this was the case for a man who lived alone in an apartment in the city. He had everything from top to bottom, but he liked going to thrift stores from time to time. He was always on the hunt for something retro, something cool to add to his collection of vintage tech. And one day he found it. An old answering machine sitting on a shelf gathering dust. It was big, clunky, totally outdated, but it was also awesome. There was just something about it that he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the wood paneling that made it look like it belonged in some swanky 70s hotel lobby. Or maybe it was the fact that it was completely analog, a tangible relic from a time before computers took over every aspect of our lives. Whatever it was, he bought it without hesitation. He plugged it into his phone line and set it up on a table next to his bed. Then he hit record. This was his announcement. "Hi, you've reached my house. Please, leave a message after the beep." Now he waited, half expecting the silence to be deafening. But then, much to his surprise, a message appeared. It was from a woman whose voice was raspy and distorted, as if she were speaking through a megaphone. She spoke quickly and urgently, her words tumbling over each other. "John, you have to listen to me. They're coming for you. You have to run. I don't know how much time you have left, but you need to get out of there. Please, please do something before it's too late." And then the line went dead. He stared at the answering machine in disbelief. Was this a prank? Had someone hacked into his phone line? He checked the caller ID, but it just said private. He pressed replay, hoping to catch every word, but all he heard was static. He deleted the message and went to bed, assuming it was just some weird one-off glitch. But the next morning when he woke up, the message was still there. It hadn't been erased, and when he played it back, he realized with a jolt that the date on the recording had somehow advanced to the next day. He tried to shake off the feeling of unease that had been creeping up on him and told himself it was just a coincidence. But then it happened again and again and again. Every single night when he went to bed, there would be a new message on the answering machine. And every morning when he woke up, the date on the recording would have changed to the next day. At first, the voices were distorted and the words were hard to make out. But as the days turned into weeks, the voices became clearer, more desperate. They were all calling him by his name, begging him to do something before it was too late. He tried to ignore them, to pretend they weren't there, but the voices wouldn't let him. They followed him around his apartment, whispering in his ear, even when he was trying to sleep. One night, he could take it no longer. He threw open the window and stepped out onto the fire escape. Maybe the voices would stop if he went somewhere else, if he got as far away from the answering machine as possible. But as soon as he did, the voices seemed to follow him, echoing in his mind. That's when he knew he had to do something. But what? What were they so afraid of? And what was it that was coming for him? He tried to remember if he had made any enemies recently, if he had said or done anything that might have put him in danger. But he couldn't think of a single person who would want to hurt him. He was a good guy, he thought. He didn't smoke or drink. He paid his bills on time. And he always held the door for the old ladies in his building. He was friendly with everyone. So why were these people so afraid? And why were they begging him for help? The more he thought about it, the more his anxiety grew. The voices on the answering machine were becoming more urgent, more frantic. And the dates on the recordings were counting down, inching closer and closer to the present day. One night, as he was lying in bed trying to sleep, he heard a knock at his door. He sat up in bed and listened intently. There it was again, a soft but insistent rapping on the wood. He told himself it was nothing. Just some late-night construction work. Or perhaps some kids playing outside. But when he looked out the peephole, he saw nothing but darkness on the other side of the door. Night after night, the knocking continued, growing louder and more persistent. He tried to reason with himself, telling himself that there was a perfectly logical explanation for it. But deep down, he knew that something was wrong. Very wrong. One night, the knocking stopped. He thought maybe it was over. that whatever it was had finally gone away. But then the phone rang, startling him. He picked up the receiver, and the voice on the other end was his own. It was a recording, obviously, but it wasn't one that he had made. His voice sounded strained and terrified, as if he were speaking from beyond the grave. "You have to let me in. John, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but you won't believe me if I do. You're gonna think I'm crazy. Please, you have to trust me. Let me in before it's too late." And then the line went dead. He could hear the clock ticking on the other end, each second dragging by like an eternity. He wanted to call back, but the number was disconnected. He tried to shake off the feeling of dread that was settling in his stomach, but it was no use. He knew that something terrible was about to happen. That night, he didn't bother locking his front door. Instead, he stood in front of it, bracing himself for whatever was about to come through. As the minutes ticked by, he could hear the clock on the answering machine counting down. 10, 9, 8. His heart was pounding in his chest. His hands were shaking. He could feel the sweat dripping down his forehead, blurring his vision. 7, 6, 5. The doorknob began to turn. He watched in horror as it slowly opened, revealing a pitch-black hallway. A cold wind swept through the opening, sending shivers down his spine. 4, 3, 2! He screamed and took a step back, tripping over his own feet. He lay on the floor, staring up at the door as it creaked open wider and wider. 1. He squeezed his eyes shut and waited for the inevitable. But it never came. Slowly, he opened one eye, then the other. The room was empty. Then he noticed something strange. The answering machine had been knocked over, and the screen was facing up. He crawled over to it and stared at the screen in disbelief. It was his face staring back at him. It was his voice that had been recorded in the future, begging him for help. And the date on the screen read tomorrow! He pressed play, and the voice started talking. "John, you have to let me in. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but you won't believe me if I do. You're gonna think I'm crazy. Please, you have to trust me. Let me in before it's too late." He could hear the voice whispering in his ear, urging him to let whoever was outside in. But he knew that would be a terrible mistake. Whoever was out there, it wasn't safe. He tried to scramble away, but his legs felt heavy, like lead. He could feel something cold and clammy wrap around his ankles, pulling him down. He struggled to free himself, but it was no use. He was trapped. The voice grew louder, more desperate. "John, please let me in. I'm scared. Help me!" He wanted to scream, but no sound came out of his mouth. He could only watch in horror as the figure outside slowly began to come in. Its hand reached under the door, and he could see its fingers twitching. It pushed the door open further, and he could see its face. It was pale and gaunt, with sunken eyes and a twisted smile. It lunged at him, and he closed his eyes tight, waiting for the pain. But it never came. Instead, he heard a loud knock on the door. He opened one eye to see the silhouette of the figure on the other side. It was tall and thin, with long, sharp claws. It knocked again, louder this time, and the screen went black.